We're launching our first ever seminar event, the Fine Homebuilding Summit. Join us October 2nd through the 4th in Southbridge, Massachusetts, as 12 of the building industry's most notable experts will offer more than 50 hours of presentations. Our goal? To explore advanced design principles, discover cutting-edge construction materials, and share trusted techniques. Space for this event is limited and expected to sell out fast. Don't wait. Visit finehomebuilding.com/summit to pre-register. That's finehomebuilding.com/summit.
And I've already told them, if you choose not to show up, I will talk about you in a bit. So if you want to be part of the success, yes. But if not, I'm going to put up pictures and I will lie and say it's your project.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Design Editor Kiley Jacques.
Hello.
Producer Jeff Rose.
Hello.
And via Skype, our favorite architect, Steve Baczek.
Hello, everybody.
You can email us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. So before we start talking to Steve, let's get some reader feedback about previous issues. And we heard from several listeners about our conversation of CLT buildings, cross-laminated timbers. Do you know anything about this, Steve?
I'm familiar with it. I'm still trying to get up to speed on it and find a client because I love testing out new stuff.
So
and trying to learn a little bit more than
what's going on.
Use it already.
Yeah. So there's the hotbed of activity for this, as you can probably guess, is in the Pacific Northwest, both in British Columbia and Washington and Oregon, and that's because of the decline of the timber industry in these parts of the world. So they're trying to make new products to keep people employed and the coffers of the states and provinces from running dry. So I heard from, what's this guy's name? Andre, who said, I'm a fan of the show and look forward to the latest air sealing episode every week. I've done a variety of residential renovations in addition to my work building commercial kitchens. The ply scraper has come to life here in the Pacific Northwest in Canada. He included 2 links for projects that we'll post on the podcast page. He says the web links I've attached show some stellar examples of timber-forward buildings and the 2017 build of Brock Commons. He says the heavy-duty parts of the build program at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver starts when students leave and is finished by the time they return in the fall. So by my math, that's like 3-4 months, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As I understand it, the CLT panels are made off-site with a CNC system and assembled into portable elements. In our relatively mild climate, the CLT walls and floors provide insulation and structure in a simple application. As Kiley mentioned recently, there's a tendency in current building to just add another layer, and I'm guessing that the drywall finish on the interiors comes about through satisfying the various interlocking code requirements. My guess it's more fundamental than that. It's fire prevention, right? You can't have exposed lumber in a commercial building, so I think that's what's, especially with students.
Well, you can. I mean, it's just a different building type. So you have to have. I mean, think of heavy timber mill style buildings that we do.
But
exposed.
You have to have sprinklers,
beams.
right?
Well, you have to have sprinklers, yeah. So it's just a different set of parameters to build by. But it is one of the types of construction.
So then we also heard from Art, and he says here in Oregon, CLT has gotten off to a rocky start. He copied an article that first appeared in the Oregonian, and it says, and I quote, "When Oregon State University leaders decided in 2014 it was time to replace the aging home of its forestry school, they wanted more than a new building. They wanted a statement. The new PV Hall." Do you think PV is named after someone, or is it the...
It is named after somebody, but I'd have to look into it.
So a PV is also a thing you use to move logs, and I wondered if that was the origin of the name. So
that'd be cooler.
It would be cooler, right?
Well, isn't it a guitar company too? Doesn't PV make it?
Yes. The new PV hall would symbolize the rebirth of the state's timber industry by showcasing its signature innovation, cross-laminated timber. With its ambitious use of wood that has been fortified to rival steel, PV Hall would underscore Oregon's place at the forefront of a revitalized forest products market. But the general contractors saw significant risk in using an untested CLT manufacturer like the one hired to supply the Corvallis project, and wanted financial cover documents obtained by the Oregonian show. School officials instead moved forward with a new builder in December of 2016. So fast forward to March, and a 1,000-pound section of the third floor buckled and crashed onto the floor below. Engineers traced the panel's failure to the glue and determined at least 5 other panels showed signs of delamination. The closer they looked, the more bad CLT panels they found. By August, at least 85 were marked for replacement.
With the same product?
Yes.
That makes perfect sense.
So I would say, Steve, if you're going to do one of these projects, make sure your CLT manufacturer is
well
experienced.
Well, it's like any system, right? I mean, you can look at pretty much any construction system. The more I consolidate the task of what I'm asking the wall or floor system to do, the higher the risk I put it at, because everything is kind of concentrated in that area, right? So if I have 5 columns and I ask all 5, I just put in one big column. Well, the failure mode of that one big column is a big load. So you have to get it right, because you don't have any backup to spread things around.
I found it interesting. They say months of delays and replacement panels will add millions to the cost of the project that has already climbed 32% to $79 million since construction began. The PV problems come years after efforts of state officials to promote a technology they view as an economic engine for rural Oregon. The state's timber employment has fallen 62% since its heyday in the 80s, from 80,000 to presently 30,000. This is the other interesting point here. The panels were made by D.R. Johnson, a venerable Douglas County timber company and newly minted CLT manufacturer, whose president, Valerie Johnson, sits on the Forestry School's Board of Visitors. So I wonder if there's a conflict of interest there.
This comes back to George W. Peavy, who was the architect hired to design the Oregon Agricultural College, established in the period.
So it is named after a person, not a tool.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
That's kind of lame. Well, Steve, thanks for being on the show today. We didn't ask you on to talk about CLT failures, but it's always interesting to have someone's perspective of such stature as yourself. So you are going to be presenting at the FHB Summit in October, 2nd through 4th, and I wanted to ask you about that and what you thought about it.
And what you're going to be talking about.
First and foremost, I'm highly looking forward to it. I tell everybody that I run into, I mean, yes, I'm speaking at it, but even if I wasn't speaking at it, I would go to that show, because it's some of your top-notch minds in the industry that are going to be talking there. I mean, it's probably one of the best put together groups of speakers that I've seen in a very long time. And you guys did it right in that you're asking all the speakers to do multiple talks, so you're not at the risk of missing somebody because I had to go listen to this person.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I'm not sure listeners will understand.
Well, a lot of times you go to conferences and it's like, okay, I really want to hear this guy talk about HVAC, but I want to hear this guy talk about advanced framing.
And they're presenting at the same time.
On Wednesday afternoon.
So you have to pick.
And then I have to pick, and I'm at the loss. And then, guess what? All Wednesday morning, there's nobody I want to listen to.
Right.
So it's like, they need, some places either just need to do a better job with understanding who's speaking and what they're speaking about, or like you guys do. It's a nice compact session, but it's a little repetitive in the sense that you're given multiple opportunities to hear the same talk, which is awesome.
That allows you to not miss anybody.
And like I said, there's everybody there I want to hear speak. So I don't want to miss any of those sessions. It's going to be a great 2 days.
What are you specifically talking about?
So I'm going to talk about, I'm doing a keynote on Wednesday evening, and I'm going to talk about positioning ourselves for success. And I think, as I'm developing that, I'm going to just talk about success in a general sense. And what do I think is successful? What's my definition of success? How do I bring that idea into my personal goals as an architect and designer and designer of buildings, and working with builders, et cetera, but talking to builders about, well, what do we think is successful in the industry? How can we make the industry more successful? And it's, I give you one little tidbit. I was having a chat with a builder last night, and I find it very interesting. I talk to builders, and we talk about, I'll put up a detail on Instagram, Stephen Baczek Architect on Instagram, for those that want to follow me. But I'll put up a detail, and people will be like, oh, well, we don't do that kind of stuff down here. Okay, well, you're there, you're a builder in that community. You want to kind of stand out and be the best, but that now you're telling me, well, we don't do that here. Well, what a great opportunity, right? To be successful, to stand out. And so why wouldn't you be the first in your community to start doing that, or talking about energy efficiency, or talking about durability to clients, and set yourself apart? I watched a documentary over the weekend, and the guy that was on the documentary talked about, for the longest time, I tried to fit in until I realized if I fit in, no one would notice me.
Yeah. So did you hear from that builder? What was his explanation of why not differentiate himself?
Yeah, I mean, we go, round and round on Instagram and talk about it, but let's say that's Builder Town USA. I mean, I could pick almost any community in the country, and I get it. Peter and I travel around doing speeches, and I get it all the time. Oh, that detail's nice, but we don't do that around here. Well, you can get that insulation. I know you can get that caulking and sealant, and I know you can get these windows because I get them here from Europe. So we can get all that stuff here. It's just a choice, on
so you're going to start including
what's my level of success and how do I define it? And it's different for everybody. So we're gonna take an evening and talk about that. And my other talk is going to be about working with builders and how do we develop a successful team. And as an architect, how do I view their job and my relationship to them? And what do I have to offer? So it's somewhat of a unique stance in that probably 90% of my work is done as design build. So very rarely are we bidding stuff out. I have a handful of builders that I work with regularly, and we tackle our projects. I know what their strengths are, and I can tailor the design project to meet certain things that they can do very, very well.
As an aside, unlike many architects, your clients are all over the country, right? And that's somewhat exceptional. So when folks say to you, like, well, we don't do that here, well, I don't think that's holds water. Right? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. I mean, I do work all over. I do work in the Southwest. I have a project in Oklahoma, one in North Carolina, a couple upstate New York, one in Maine.
These aren't traditional.
In Missouri, I have 3 down in Missouri with Jake. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I'll use Jake. I do work with Jake Bruton, who's Aero Building out of Columbia, Missouri. And, you couldn't find much more of a remote climate in the building industry than Columbia, Missouri. I mean,
and it's not
jurisdictions don't
thought
even have
of as the East and West Coast where there are people with lots of money and are demanding high performance housing. That is not typically associated with that kind of building that you do.
Things are heavily regulated. I mean, here in the Northeast, it's like it's a little easier to be more energy efficient because our requirements are higher here. Mm-hmm. And we have building inspectors that actually look at insulation levels or U factors at windows and stuff. And in Columbia, Missouri, a building permit, you kind of go, you give a check, and they say, okay, go ahead, start building. And it's like, no one's looking at plans. You build whatever you want, and you go out into the field and you dig a hole and you put a foundation in. Mm-hmm. But, Jake is taking the effort to kind of set himself apart. And, his personal idea of success is much different than most of the builders down there, so. it's fun stuff. It's fun stuff. I'd go out of my mind if I did everything the same way.
Is that why you like to work around the country?
Yeah. I mean, I tell people it's not necessarily where, it's the client and the right project. You gotta have the good clients, and some of them have to be open-minded. So when we tell them, okay, we're not going to put, we just did a house in Columbia, Missouri, almost 3,000 square feet. And we told the client, yeah, we're not going to put a concrete slab in. We're going to build your floor on the dirt inside the foundation.
I would be a little alarmed at the prospect of that, I got to say. So yeah. How did you sell them on this idea?
So we just, we talked it through about how, it's certainly going to save a little bit of money. It lessens the carbon footprint. And it still is a floor that once we're done with the floor, you wouldn't know. I've walked through the house. You would not know there's no concrete slab or no basement under it. You just wouldn't. It's, when it's done, it's done. And I have that detail in like 3 different projects. And the interesting thing is I've come across other people in the country that said, hey man, I loved your detail where you did that basement without the slab. And I'm doing that, on my new house in Michigan, or I just did that on an addition in Connecticut. And so it's cool to hear that, people are taking it and thinking on their own, because that's what we should be doing.
How long ago did you start doing that, Steve?
The first project we did in a basement without a slab was probably 4 years ago. And it just derived from every project I do with these handful of builders. We typically sit down and we go literally from the excavated dirt through the roof, and we question everything. Okay, do we really need that footing? Do we really need a slab? Do we need this? And we started talking about the slab, for instance, and said, well, we know the homeowner is going to want a hardwood floor in the basement. So to get to that means, hardwood floor, some type of floor sheathing, sleepers, and then the concrete slab. Okay, well, what is the concrete slab really doing? Not a whole hell of a lot. And it's forcing us to go to this sleeper and layer of Advantech, for example. And so what we did was said, okay, well, let's think for a second, take the concrete slab out. How do we get there? Well, the hardwood floor is going to stay. The Advantech is going to stay. But the sleepers don't have anything to attach to. So how do we attach the Advantech to something? Okay, we'll do a second layer of Advantech. We'll turn it 90 degrees and stagger the joints. So now this house has this 1,500 square foot floating 1.5-inch raft in the basement. And then we attach the hardwood floor to that, over 4 inches of insulation. That's over 10 inches of stone that is piped to drain.
Cool.
So,
very cool. Have you seen that, Patrick?
I remember in the first Fine Homebuilding house, you did a similar floor system, as I recall, but it had joists, as I recall. It wasn't on the gravel.
Yeah. So it's one of these whole things of kind of the innovation. Evolving. I mean, if this was graphic, I could draw you this really cool thing. I just finished a project for a gentleman who heads up entrepreneurship and innovation as a professor at Babson College. And so I got to spend a lot of time with him, and which makes my job really interesting in just all my different clients and the things I get to, expose to. But this particular gentleman, I just picked his brain for the whole 1.5 years and probably got about, $30,000 worth of consulting out of this guy, just in understanding innovation and how to think and developing a discipline. And so I have this thing I call the innovation oval, where it's like when I finish a project, I can't start the next project at the same place I started the last project, because I should have learned something through that project that allows the second project to be different and better.
Right? I like the way you think.
So, he says that innovation, all these big companies, they have Department of Innovation. I think innovation is a product, but it isn't. It's a discipline in his eyes. And that you really just have to set up your way of thinking to be innovative. And that's how it is. It's kind of like Edison, right? I didn't find one solution. I found 900 ways not to build a light bulb.
Right.
But those 900 ways contributed to the way to make one.
Innovation is a discipline. I'm going to quote you on that.
That's something I'm going to put on my cubicle wall.
Exactly.
You should put it on Instagram. You can find me there at Stephen Baczek Architect.
So those of you who are listening before the show said, Steve says to me, he says, I am going to plug my Instagram handle as much as I possibly can. And I told him that was awesome.
Yes.
Well,
Steve's giving him his time to be on the show. We should remind people. So that's what he gets.
I have a side bet with Gerton. I have a side bet with Gerton on more followers, and my Instagram got hacked, so I have a major setback. So I'm trying to ramp it up here.
You need all the help you can get.
I need all the help I can get, and he posts awesome stuff. So I call him the MacGyver of the building industry world.
He has a great problem-solving intellect, I gotta say. Like it's not, I can't do this, I don't know how right now, but I'm going to figure it out.
You give him a rubber band, a tube of glue, and a 2x4, and like he'll build you a life raft or something. It's like, and he'll talk about how he did it 30 years ago. Well, I remember 30 years ago, my uncle and I.
That's great.
So.
He was on the show not too long ago, and it was
right.
fascinating talking to him about his start in the business. And we're going to do things a little different today. You and I would ordinarily talk about what's going on at home, but I think we'll keep that till the end of the show. We'll let Steve go by that point. But I had some questions for Steve unrelated to the summit that I hoped he would answer, if you're willing, Steve.
Yeah, certainly. Fire away.
So you had a rather interesting path to architecture. Can you tell me a little bit about how you became an architect and what gave you the interest in building?
Yeah, so in high school, we had an architecture class that I took all 4 years. I was probably the only student the teacher said that took all 4 years of his architecture drafting course. I've always loved it. And in fact, 35 years later, I still stay in touch with him. I had dinner with him probably about 5 months ago.
That's really cool.
And we just chatted, and he's really pleased with where I ended up, and I thanked him for all his help. But I went into the military right after our high school at age 17, was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, had just an awesome experience there, great time, which I got to walk with some of the most successful people in the United States military, which got me on this kind of understanding success and, getting that. But truth be told, I got out of the Marine Corps and I was planning on going to a college to go back into the Marine Corps and fly jets. That was like my ultimate dream. It still would be my number one job. Not that I don't love what I do, but Top Gun got me.
Architecture's number two.
Yeah, architecture's number two. But it is funny because I had met my wife kind of while I was in that process, and she was graduating from a school out in Western Mass coming back to Boston. And I was like, okay, I'll come back there with you. And she's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I always loved architecture. I'll go to architecture school. So I went to architecture school, but in there, I developed a really close friendship with the department head. And so you understand, I was 4 years ahead of everybody else in my class. So I kind of stood out.
And some life experience. You were an ideal student, I'm sure.
I was number one in my class. I graduated with a 3.92 in 5 years of architecture school. So it was somewhat unheard of. So I stood out for that reason. But I had gotten a job in a large architecture firm in Cambridge, but then I got a call about a year and a half into it from the department head. And he said, hey, he goes, we just had this talk with Joe Stiebrick, this renowned building scientist, came to the school and gave a lecture.
Did you know who he was at that time?
And he was, yeah. Joe came and gave a
talk.
No,
did you know who he was at that time?
I vaguely knew. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I went home and Googled it and found out a little bit more. But the teacher and department head was standing in the back of the room hanging out with Betsy. And she was talking about, we just got this Building America contract and we're looking to hire an employee. And, we need somebody that could really understand this and can do this and that. And he goes, I got the perfect guy for you. And so he called me and said, hey, give Betsy a call. She's expecting it. And I gave him a call, met with them. They hired me on the spot. And I worked at Building Science Corporation for 10 years. And as an architect, I don't think you get a better education than working with Joe, Coda, Armin Rudd, Peter Yost, John Straub, and having these people in and out of the office every day talking about stuff.
What were you doing there? What did you do at BSC?
So I was a project architect. We did a lot of demonstration projects to show that, hey, all these crazy things that Joe's out there talking about and saying, we can actually do, and we can build these stuff. And then we'll go out with Coda or Stephanie or Phil, and we'll test it. And we can get this air tightness down. We can use drywall as an air barrier. All of these things that we said, we did. And, there's a big project I did a 10-house townhouse project in Cleveland, Ohio, that is still up. Someone on Instagram, and Steve Baczek, architect there, by the way, had emailed me or messaged me on Instagram, and they said they were from Cleveland, and we got talking, and I said, hey, can you do me a favor? Go by West 58th Street and take a couple pictures of this. And he sent the pictures. He goes, I can't believe that place is like 10 years old or 12 years old. The place looks like it was built last year. It's in awesome shape. And so that was good to hear. And he sent me a whole bunch of pictures, and, it was exciting. But the other part of the building science thing was, as a young architect, I got to go into buildings with Joe and Coda and those guys and Peter and take them apart because they failed. So, I tell everybody, I got my master's degree and a couple PhDs working at building science just by taking buildings apart and understanding what the failure mode of that flashing was, or what was the failure mode of this vapor transmission or air leakage, or whatever the problem was, or that mold, what was causing it. And Joe has, one of the most unique senses in his ability to just bring things to the most common denominator and explain it to me in like 3 sentences and be like, yeah, okay, how does everybody else not understand it now? Mm-hmm. Right? Because it is that simple. It's like mold. You need the right temperature, you need a food source, and you need water. You don't need anything else. It's those 3 things. That's what grows mold. And so solve for one of those 3 things, that's the problem. And you don't have mold anymore. It is that simple. But people turn mold, you got to test it. You got to do this. You got to do that. No, you don't. Get rid of the water. You don't have mold. It's that simple.
It's always struck me that you're very hands-on, Steve. And knowing this now about you, that makes perfect sense. I picture you always at the job site. You really.
And I do spend a lot of time, and the builders appreciate it. Yeah. And they know, the builders that I work with regularly understand that, like, I could sit here and I could draw window details up the wazoo, right? I mean, for those of you that are familiar with Green Building Advisor, that whole detail library, the 1,040 drawings are all mine. I drew those like 6 or 7 years ago for GBA. But I could draw window details and I can get it all. But instead of spending $1,000 doing that, I just tell the builder, you know what? When the windows show up, let me know, and I'll come out and we'll install the first one together. And it's not me going out there and playing teacher. It's, okay, we have the sheathing guy from Zip there. We have the window rep from Sierra Pacific Windows. We got the builder. We got the guy supplying the tape and flashing. And we sit there and say, okay, I say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to have this slope sill. I have a back dam. Have the zip stretch tape go up, fold over like this. Okay, we'll back off the windows on the jamb and head, install the window, plumb it up, et cetera, tape off the nailing flange, and that's what I consider a successful window. And then we kind of go around the crowd, and it's like, okay, do you guys agree? Everybody agrees. Then I look at the builder and say, okay, go do the other 38 like this. Mm-hmm. And you have everybody's confidence in that it's a job well done. And that costs the client a lot less because it's 2 hours of my time out there instead of 10 hours drawing details that the builder really doesn't use anyway.
Right.
So it's that whole, when it gets back to the talk in Southbridge here coming up, it's those kinds of things working with the builder that, architects love to draw drawings because I can get paid more money if I produce 15 more sheets in the drawing set. But what good are drawings if they're not going to be used? And more importantly, if they're drawn wrong. Yeah. Like I've seen some window details drawn and they're horrendous. I would throw them away.
Right.
and it's like, so let's just figure out whatever that path to success is for you. For me, it's to go out there and people say, oh my God, you know a lot about building. Well, I know a lot about building because I climb the ladder and I sit on the roof on the trusses and have lunch with the framer and say, hey, did everything go right? Is there anything you would have done differently? And, and then you get that, well, the last time I framed the roof truss a couple of years ago, we did this. It seemed to work a little bit better. And it's like, okay, bang, there you go. I just got a tip from a framer. Guy's been doing it for 30 years. I'd be an ignorant SOB to climb up on the roof and think I know more about framing than he does.
Right.
I think you're atypical that way, Steve.
I think,
but that's how I position myself for success, to get up there. And I want everything from everybody. The HVAC guy, did we give you enough space? Did things work out? Were there problems? Is there something I should have thought about more? Because even now, 27 years of experience, we build a house and it's like, I just had one on the Cape. We did this slab on grade. Windows or sliders came down on both sides, and then the guy looks at me and says, how are we going to get a wire over to that outlet you want to put there? And it's like sliders with a window in between, and there was a little patch of wall underneath it. Well, we didn't really have any access to get it in there. So it's like, even after 27 years, man, it's every project's a challenge. There's things there because we're doing something new or something we haven't done before. So
how did you solve that problem?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Fortunate we had a rain screen on it, so we actually
from the
ran
outside.
The wire out.
Yeah,
we ran it across the rain screen and then brought it back in the wall.
That's pretty elegant.
And we put an electrical outlet outside, so that way there we could have reason for it.
Cool. What do you think the greatest challenges for the field of architecture in the coming years and decades? What do we need to be doing that we aren't now?
I think the collaboration effort is always going to be a challenge. Peter and I, we have this home building crossroads seminar series, and we're going to be going down and talking in Orlando, Houston, Charlotte, Raleigh, Nashville, and Atlanta this fall. And when we do those talks, we just went down to Raleigh and Charlotte for a week and looked at a whole bunch of projects to kind of get a vibe on what they're building and what their shortcomings are and stuff. And it's one of those arenas where the architect does what they do, and then they give the drawings and put it into somebody else's hands and say, okay, it's your problem now, and you figure it out. And the drawings, we were in this one townhouse project. I'm flipping through the drawings, and it's like there's thermal bridges everywhere in the details. That just the way it was drawn, I would have never drawn it that way. But they like nobody holds any responsibility, because when I talk to the builder, they say, hey, we just built what they drew. You talk to the architect, well, that's how we do it down here. Okay, well, is anybody down here thinking on their own?
Right.
Right.
Is anybody worried this is not going to work?
Go back. So I used to, when you're a youngster, you don't like cliches and like these short stories from old wise people, and like you don't listen to your own dad when he tells you certain things. But I will tell you this: when I was in the Marine Corps, I had this temporary duty. I went to this place. It was a leadership school, and I'll never forget. Every one of the bathroom mirrors across the top of it was painted, "You are responsible." And I never forgot that. And I take that through life. It's like everything. As a dad, I am responsible. As a father, I am responsible. As a husband, I am responsible. As an architect, there's certain things I'm responsible for. I shouldn't send drawings out to the field that don't provide a solution to build. Now, the framer might look at it and say, hey, we frame this eave this way. Is that okay? Sure, we can change it. That works. But I at least send them out with a solution. I don't send out a set of drawings and say, okay, you guys figure it out. Right? So and that's that whole responsibility. I took responsibility. I did my job. Now, we might alter the way I do my job, but I did my job. And I sent the drawings out in a cohesive fashion so that we can actually build the building if we choose to build it that way. And a lot of architects don't do that. And then it's one of those challenges of Okay, when something goes wrong, whose fault is it? Well, it's nobody's fault now because nobody took any responsibility. And the industry is very challenged in that way, that it's very it's very broken up and compartmentalized, that we should be working in the other direction, right? I mean, all the 6-8 builders that I work with, they want to make money, they want to stay in business, they want to build good things. As an architect, I want to design and have good things built. We have a mutual successful path, right? Our path to success is pretty mutual. We need to work with each other, not turn it into this, well, this is your problem, you figure it out. You know, it shouldn't be that way. The profession is, and the industry is getting tougher, as you guys know. I mean, there's new products that come online. I get emails all the time. Hey, Steve, you want to try this out on one of your projects? Oh, we have a new weather-resistant barrier. Oh, hey, you should try using my windows. It's like, I do one post on Instagram, Stephen Baczek Architect, about windows, and the next 2 days I'll get like 10 emails from window companies because they're just trolling those places. Oh, hey, you know, can we meet with you and talk to you about our windows? And it's like the industry is getting tougher and tougher, but we're taking less responsibility, where we should really be taking more to sort out this information and develop the best product we can, instead of this kind of throwaway mentality. Yeah, the building's only going to be there 20 years and then it's going to get torn down. What does it really matter what we do anyway? That's just a bad way to think.
Agreed. What kind of go ahead.
Well, I just feel like I hear that a lot from architects. That's who I speak with more than builders, and they're always talking about one of the constant challenges for almost every project is integrating the process at the start and the communication required. And I feel like I hear that again and again. So that makes sense.
Well, one of the problems with architect, you know, I obviously have some friends that are architects.
I would hope so.
I have more plumbers and electricians as friends than architects. But the problem is, you know, most architects really don't understand what it is to be a framer or electrician or a plumber. You know, to them, it's just, hey, that's some guy that, you know, the plumber's just some guy that runs pipe in my buildings. It's like, just do whatever you got to do to get that done. Well, but that doesn't mean I put a toilet, you know, 80 feet away from the sewer outlet in the basement and then expect him to just have no problem doing it.
Right.
You know, and vice versa. I've been on jobs where, yeah, it might have been a little bit of a challenge, and the plumber comes and is like, we can't put the toilet there. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you know, I'm trying to get the pipe back. I was like, okay, well, hold on. Let me go call the client and tell them they can't have a toilet in their bathroom. Of course we can have a toilet there. We just got to figure it out. And we do, right? But it's not only architects not want to do their jobs. There's painters that don't want to do their jobs. I mean, I remember having this fight with a painter. It's like, hey, the client, can you put 3 samples of these exterior colors on the sidewall? Oh, really? You really want me to do that? Yeah, that's your job. You know, if you don't want to be a painter, then stop painting. Go be a carpenter. Don't complain about it, right? And the same with architects. If you're going to sit there and complain about drawing details or trying to figure out that framing plan, then go do something else, right? I just come across so many people that don't want to do their job, but they all want to get paid, which is the real interesting thing, right? The painter really wants to get paid, and I said, just charge accordingly, and we'll get it done. If the homeowner wants a different color on every wall of every bedroom, then that's what we're going to do.
Right.
Just charge them accordingly.
Yeah.
And our job is to make them happy and build the house that they want, and not what we want. You know, we're not going to go in and paint every house just white. We're not going to paint all the walls white and the ceiling white, because that makes your job easier.
When I was a builder, that's what I would say. Let's just paint everything white. It's going to be awesome.
You're
going to love it.
I was very fortunate that, you know, I didn't talk much about it, but between my Marine Corps time and going to college, I actually had about 3 or 4 different jobs, one of which was a framer, one of which was an electrician. The electrician job, I I pulled wire for a house in a crawl space that was about 30 inches and it was about a 4,000 square foot footprint. So I spent literally about 6 weeks in this 30-inch hole crawling around pulling wire. So I said, okay, maybe an electrician isn't the greatest job.
Maybe I'll be a painter.
Then I worked for a framer friend of mine, and that was a lot of fun actually in July and August. But the roof in January, all of a sudden the glory of being the framer and having your shirt off, getting that nice tan and carrying lumber around, it faded really quick in January. And I said, man, it might be okay now, but when I'm 40 and have a family and 3 kids, is this what I want to be doing? And it's nothing against builders, because man, I give them the utmost credit. Some of the environments that they work in and the time of the year that they have to work in, and and even there, I'm trying to work with them. I was just with a builder yesterday after a client meeting, and we were trying to figure out a way. We're going to start this project kind of the beginning of November, and it's like, okay, let's figure out the best way to get the foundation in, the walls up, and get the roof trusses on, and basically build a warehouse for you. So then you can go inside and pour the slab, do the interior partitions and all of that stuff in, December, January, February.
Smart.
And, try and work towards that. So it's that team effort of, if I can make their job easier, and, then they're going to do a good job too. And those guys respect that, right? If they know that I'm on their side, I'm going to get their best effort, not this adversarial effort.
Right.
Right.
This guy is trying to screw us, so we're going to try and screw him.
Doesn't give a shit. He just wants these stupid details, and it's friggin' February, and we're on the coast, and the wind is blowing. It's 0 degrees out here, and we got to put up this stupid roof sheathing, right? It's like, no, I respect their jobs. I respect what they do, and I'm trying my best to make it, the best job for all of us, and not be adversarial about it. It's like, we all have a common goal. Let's just work towards it.
We're about out of time, but I just wanted to ask you, for those of our listeners who are considering going to the summit but have yet to commit, what is your elevator speech to go, and why should they do that?
So I think that the industry is moving pretty darn fast. And again, because of my traveling and spectrum of understanding from kind of the speaker realm and knowing all these speakers, like any industry, there's good speakers and there's bad speakers, right? There's conferences I go to, I sit in on speakers, and I walk out of there and go, that guy is totally full of crap. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And he shouldn't be allowed to speak anymore.
At all, ever.
And they're out there. And, this summit is absolutely, like I said, absolutely incredible. And I'm not lying. Believe me, I've heard John Straub speak. I've heard Joe speak, Gus Handegord, some people that some people don't even know that are the best in the game. And I would go to this summit even if I wasn't speaking, because you're not going to get a better collection today of people that are doing and talking about stuff they're doing today. These aren't guys that are showing you slides of what they did 15 years ago. These are all people. Every one of them that is speaking there is going to show you a slide of what they did last month, or what they're planning to do next month, and how they're solving problems. This is real-time information, up to date, by great minds thinking it through. And you should go there, because if you're in this industry, you don't want to be the guy that just follows along. You want to be the person that stands out. And the only way to stand out is to get some knowledge, get some education from the right core of people. And, coming here, it's the right core of people. And if you just sit there as a bump on the log and you don't ask questions, then you're wasting your time there. Because you should be bringing a notebook full of questions on your project. If you're going to see Jordan speak about mini splits, you should bring every question you have about mini splits to him. He is a great mind that thinks things through, mechanical, thought. He's at the top of the game. And for you not to walk in there with 10 questions to ask him, then you're really selling yourself short on being successful.
It's a great advice.
Yeah. Steve, it's been a...
Plus, I was saying, if you don't show up, and I know a whole lot of people in the industry, and I've already told them, if you choose not to show up, I will talk about you in a bit. So if you want to be part of the success, yes. But if not, I'm going to put up pictures and I will lie and say it's your project.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, and it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Hey man, I love working with you guys. I can't wait for the summit. It's going to be, 3 great days. I'm totally looking forward to hanging out with everybody. For those of you in Colorado, I just bought my plane ticket for the Keep Craft Alive. I'm going to be out there on the panel on October 24th in Denver. So if you're out there in the Colorado world, then hopefully you come by and have some chat with us and talk about building science and the building industry. And for those of you that can't find me, you can always find me on Instagram at Stephen Baczek Architect.
I'm glad I didn't have to ask again. I was going to ask
you should spell Baczek though, because some people aren't going to get that right.
It's Boy Apple Charlie Zebra Echo Kilo.
BACZEK, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Steve, thanks again, man. It's great talking to you as always, and I look forward to seeing you at the summit.
All right. Hey, thanks, both of you guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Take care.
Really appreciate the time.
Talk
Thanks.
soon.
Guys, have a good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
So I heard from you over the weekend because you were dealing with your drawer.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the heart to really respond.
You were a little slow on
Do you want to tell us what you were doing and show us what your
my
solution
epic
was?
fail.
Let's just go to that right now.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the face of this drawer split in half. The top piece came off entirely. The bottom piece
So
is...
can I ask you a very basic question?
Yeah.
Do you keep silverware in there?
No.
So is there like especially heavy stuff?
No, actually, it's funny you ask. I keep rubber bands and plastic bags. So it's very light stuff. That's my plastic bag and rubber band drawer. Everybody's got one of those, right?
You must have a metric S-ton of rubber bands. That's all I can say.
I would like to point out that the guy that I bought the house from built those shelves, and they're thick, and the lip is, I think, too slight.
Okay.
So that might have contributed to this.
Yep, because there's not enough meat there.
There's not enough meat. In fact, when you wipe crumbs off the counter, you're going to miss half of them because, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, my thought...
So you glued this back together.
Glued it back together.
And then it wouldn't fit.
The wood was swollen. So I thought I'll take out some wood from the center, right? So I don't have to mess with the profile. So I would plane the...
So you'd re-separate it.
I'd re-separate them. I'd take that bottom half off the drawer face, or the face off the drawer.
Yep.
But that was the first sort of hiccup. All of the screws keeping it on are stripped, so I couldn't get it off. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll just take all of the wood off the top piece and then somehow make them fit.
Reprofile it.
Yeah. None of it worked out. I bought the world's crummiest hand plane.
Part of your text said, do you have a hand plane I could borrow?
Right.
And I said, I do, but it's dull.
Mm-hmm.
And
I said, that's okay.
I said, it's
soft
dull.
Wood.
What kind of wood species in it? And
right.
you said, that's okay.
Yellow.
It's a soft wood.
Yeah, yellow pine.
And I didn't hear anything from you. And then you sent me a photo of the plane you bought.
Right.
And let's have that slide, Jeff.
Junk.
And so...
$13 junk right there.
I think hand planes and chisels, and maybe to a lesser extent, like other hand tools like screwdriver, that is something you cannot cheap out, especially hand planes.
Right.
They just have to be good quality to work. Mm-hmm. It's like you, as a chef, you would never buy cheap knives. Hand plane especially has got to be good stuff. And I think that like minimum you can spend is like $40 for the Stanley block plane that most every carpenter has in the world. But if you're going to go cheaper than that, just
forget it.
Don't. Do something else. Get a belt sander.
Yeah, I'm just going to sand it. I will say, though, that I did learn a lot about hand planes because I watched some videos. And the other issue was that I didn't have a vise to grip the wood. So that was a mess. So I'm lucky I still have all my fingers. Back to square one.
I had it's not a similar fail, but I had a fail on Saturday too. I spent an hour making a jig for my portable table saw, the one I cannot talk about that I'm testing, right? And so I can't show a photo of the jig I built or it on the saw because I'm prohibited by the manufacturer from discussing it.
Hush.
We'll be able to talk about that before too long, I suspect. But anyway, I spent an hour building the thing, and then I spent another hour trying to make it work. And no matter what I did, I could not get the saw blade to cut a bridle joint perfectly vertical, right? So what I did is made this jig to hold this piece of wood vertical, and it would pass through the saw blade, and with a few passes, you could make a notch that a corresponding tenon would fit into. But no matter what I did, I could not get it to go straight. So, exasperated, I sent a photo to my friend Matt Kenny, and I said, my homemade tenoning jig is not working at all for my bridle joints. And like a half an hour later, he wrote back and he said, I'm not surprised, Red Green. And for those of you who don't know who Red Green is, it's a Canadian TV show where this guy does like all kinds of half-baked stuff, right? And he said, do you want my tenoning jig? And I said, no, I want your domino. And so later that day, he brought his domino over, and I do have photos of that because we're allowed to show this tool. But that is definitely the way to make joinery in the modern world. And when I was explaining the difficulties I was having to my wife, Carol, she said, well, what do you need? She's like, do you need one of those domino things? And I said, do you have any idea what those cost? And she's like, oh, I don't know, $200. And I was like, try $1,500.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And she's like, oh, you don't need that.
Why so expensive? Why are they so expensive?
I don't know. I mean, it is an engineering marvel. So what does it do? So it's got a plunge mechanism, very much like a biscuit joiner. Those of you who are listening have probably used a biscuit joiner. And when you push it in, a cutter, in the case of a biscuit joiner, is like a saw blade. It comes out and makes a rounded slot. Well, what this does is works similarly, except it has a rotating drill bit that goes back and forth. It oscillates, and it makes a mortise.
Okay.
And there's no machine like it, so that's why it costs $1,500, I suspect. I don't have a really good explanation, but it is mechanically complicated.
How long did it take you to do that once you had the right tool?
An hour.
Okay.
By the time of making the mortises, putting the floating tenons in, and gluing it up, it took about an hour, and which is half the time it took me to do nothing the day before. So, these are doors for my wardrobe cabinet. The next step is to rabbet the backside for a plywood panel. And then I forgot that Carol told me she wanted mirrors on the backside.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so now I have to figure out how to do that.
It's not going to change anything you've done already, though, right?
No, it shouldn't.
It's always glue.
My rabbet might be deeper than I anticipated, but that'd be fine too. So that's pretty much it, except for, so those of you who are regular listeners of the podcast might remember a couple of episodes ago when we had a monumental fail trying to measure the temperature of beer cans using a koozie, right? And I mentioned it last episode, but forgot until we were done. But we've gotten a little insight into why that didn't work, but we're waiting for Matt's return.
Right. We can't, we need to. Because he's a big part of this.
And I want to blame him for the whole thing is the more fundamental reason.
I see.
So it's not nearly as fun to do that unless he's here. So he's honeymooning in the south of France, I believe, right now. So we thought of having him call into the show while he's honeymooning, but Jeff told me that was a bad idea. So we had Steve on, and that was a pleasure, right?
That was a real pleasure. I really like that guy a lot.
You know, I've never met a more practical architect in my life.
That's what I love about him.
And I think it has to come down to
and yet
spending
he's also a thinker. Yes.
People who have hands-on experience, I don't think that's exclusive, right?
Right.
I think spending 5 years in the Marine Corps is going to put a certain perspective that's valuable in life. Yeah. I think working as a tradesperson while getting educated is probably the most valuable thing an architecture student could do.
And he's an artist too. Yeah. You know, he's a very well-rounded person in that he's into all aspects of what he does, beyond what he does. You know, he's a science geek. He's an artist. He's deep thinker. These are all great skills that come together.
And increasingly valuable when you're talking about high performance home, because you have to have thought through all the steps and all the ramifications of your decisions very early on, or things fall apart quickly. And especially if you have folks in the trades who have no respect or little respect for what you do because they don't think you know what you're doing. Yeah. If you know what you're doing, people are a lot more likely to listen to you.
And he's so passionate about it.
Yeah.
People pick up on that.
And I think when you have some stature like he does, and I don't mean physically, although he is a presence, people like, you get good clients that way, right? Yeah. You're like, oh, well, you're the guy that people ask about this. Yeah. You're the architect I want.
You think that's why he's been able to travel so much for get all these different jobs around the country, because his reputation precedes him?
I do. I architects generally don't have a practice outside the region. I mean, there are architects who do designs for plan services and stuff, and those are solid all over the country, much to my chagrin in many cases, because they're not regionally appropriate. But very few architects who do custom homes can do their work anywhere in the country, and he does, which is pretty remarkable.
He knows a lot of building envelopes.
What do you have to say, Jeff? I waited until he was leaning back in his chair and looking like we were done before I sprang this on him.
Unlike the last time with Bear, you guys don't have that to look forward to when we sign off.
That's a regrettable oversight, I gotta say. What do you have to say? What have you been working on?
Me? I nothing.
Good.
Of value, yeah. Nothing of value.
And you're going to be at the summit too?
Oh, yeah. I'll be running around like a chick with a head cut off.
So you're doing the AV there?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a thankless job.
Yeah.
I know how those
Way
go.
to boost his spirits.
Oh, it's hard. And you're going to be in a space that is not your own, which is complicating, right?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm familiar with the venue because that's where we do Fun Woodworking Live. So I've been there the past 3 years.
What can you say about that venue? I hear it's kind of a cool
beautiful,
place,
right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's very nice. And it's ideally suited to this kind of a thing. I mean, it's actually designed for the military.
Really? For training?
Yeah.
Interesting. And how big are the rooms? Because I remember some of the rationale was they wanted to have them intimate and not intimidating, so you could ask questions.
Yeah, I would say probably, anywhere from like 30 people up to 300, in various sizes.
Like a university.
But not like a stadium.
Right.
Yeah. So everyone will be seeing who puts their hand up, is my suspicion.
Yeah.
I love that our whole team is going. I'm excited about that. It's rare that awesome. We all go someplace.
I'm looking forward to meeting all these people that I've been following for my 20-year career.
Me too.
It's like Steve said earlier, there's never been an assembly of these luminaries before. It's incredible. I'm going to do the outro. I forgot. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Kiley, Jeff, and Steve for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find the podcast. And please don't forget about the FHB Summit, which occurs from October 2nd through the 4th. And you can go on our podcast page to get links to the registration page. And we hope we'll all see you guys there.
We do.
Thanks for listening.